Hi, Gary Hoberman here. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Codeless. Today we have Louis Liu joining us, who's created a company which, again, like my favorite thing is technology, as everyone knows. And when you think about technology and the art of the possible, when we met Eigen, which is Louis's company, it was all very real for us of how we're going to be working together. I mean, it was amazing to see this technology in action. But I'm not going to steal Louis's thunder. So, Louis, first, give us a little bit of perspective who you are, your background, your journey to create Eigen, what Eigen does, and I can't wait to get into like how we're actually working together to solve real valuable problems for our joint customers and customers of the future together. Please, Louis, take it away.
Absolutely, really great to see you again, Gary. It's always like whenever we have a conversation, I think we always have like a million ideas. But I'll give everyone a really quick introduction in terms of myself, my background, and really the journey that got me to sort of found Eigen. I guess the story of Eigen actually started, a long time ago between high school and college. So it was the summer. I just graduated high school, right, and I want to play video games all summer, right? As one does. And my parents, being the good sort of Asian American parents that they are, were like,
Wait,
"Louis,
wait,
you're getting
which
a
Louis? You can't just say that. Yeah, Louis, what video games? Before I gotta ask. So like, what's
uh
so
yeah."
summer? Yeah,
It's the summer of 2004, right?
yes.
So this was basically like StarCraft Brood Wars. That was still in vogue. This is before StarCraft 2, right? Counter Strike. Counter Strike and StarCraft.
I love
Those.
it,
I
Louis. I
actually.
always that's my family always described me as when I was glued to the TV even back in the earliest days of games when I was young. So that was why I asked. I had to like I didn't know you were a gamer. That's very cool to know. That's good. Okay, go back. So your parents. So you're spending the summer gaming, but your parents wanted
Yeah,
probably to do
yeah.
something different. I'm
My
sure.
parents are like, Lewis, you're getting a job, and I'm like, guys, I got into Harvard. I'm going to Harvard. I can play video games all summer if I want. And they're like, no, 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 you're getting a job. So eventually, I got a job, right? And so I got a job at a tire distribution plant in northern New Jersey, and the job was minimum wage, $5.50 an hour. Um, and it was data entry. So they had a sort of boxes and boxes of these sort of invoices and purchase orders. And I had, and by the way, they were still printed back then in, those like dot and matrix printers with with the holes on the sides. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
there's
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
so this is all printed in that way, and my job was to insert all these data, from these invoices and purchase orders into Excel, manually, of course, at $5.50 an hour. So after the first day of doing this, I was just like, I can't do this. This is like mind-boggling. Like I can't do this anymore. So the next day, I come in and I ask my manager. I'm like, hey, like, do you actually have digital copies of these documents? And he said, yeah, we actually, they're all like TXT file. We actually spent all last week printing it out for you because we thought it'd be easier. um, so and I actually, this is maybe the first version of Eigen. You can call it Eigen 0.0000 or something. Where I spent the next couple of days in C++, writing a little script that automated these TXT files into a CSV file. So, document into Excel. I guess in about 4 days, I automated myself out of an entire summer job, and I got back to playing video games. So that I think, as a high schooler, I didn't really understand like the broader implications of what I was doing. I was just trying to get back to the summer I had planned, right? But I guess that sort of started me on the journey of Eigen, right? So after college, my first job after college was working for
Louis,
McKinsey.
I
Go
asked,
ahead.
so you went.
Yeah.
So did you go into Harvard with an idea of technology, or what did you think when you were going into Harvard after that summer? What were you? Any ideas?
Yeah, no, I thought I was going to be a professional artist, actually, a painter. So I was actually the first double major in fine arts and physics at Harvard.
Wait,
And
wait, fine arts and physics. Okay,
Yep,
that's
painting
I
and
get
music.
it. That's
Yep. I actually thought I was gonna be a professional artist. And somehow I ended up at McKinsey in London because of a bet with a friend.
wait, a
And
bet with a friend. So you got to expand there. So did you lose
yeah,
the
yeah.
bet or win the bet? Because McKinsey is
I
amazing. So
I won the
yeah.
bet. So basically, I thought I was going to be an artist, right? I was working with some galleries senior year, and one of my best friends in college, I was making fun of him. I was like, "You look ridiculous wearing a suit and tie every day to the classroom, to the dining hall, for those like on campus recruitment things." And he was like, Lewis, these jobs are really competitive. I bet you $100 you cannot get a job in McKinsey London, which was like his dream job. And so I said, you know what, I'll take the bet. And so I got the offer, and I'm like, wow, like I know very little about business. This seems pretty cool. Takes me to London. I get to travel, and that's how I ended up in London at McKinsey.
That's an
So
amazing story. I like that. So you were going to prove him wrong, and you landed one of the top jobs. I
yeah.
actually think that's. But like, do you still have this artistic drive
Oh
inside?
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you,
Like the paintings behind me, I did in college. Actually, I actually just did a painting a couple weeks ago. So I still paint. It's sort of, some people do music, some people, like, for me it's I still paint. Yeah, absolutely.
I want a piece, Lewis. I'm gonna next time I see you. I'm gonna have to. That's awesome. I like that. It looks like you've got the geometric shapes. You probably have some physics in there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah. No, these are different orbitals, Newtonian orbitals at different starting energies. It actually
Oh,
goes across the room. There's like nine of them. Yeah.
they're very cool. That's amazing. Okay, so get it. So you're in London. You're working for McKinsey.
Yeah. And so it was
Um,
2008, right? Actually, my first day on the job was the day that Lehman collapsed. And so this is all related, right? So, and as a junior management consultant, you spend a lot of time just wrangling data, reconciling data. And I served a lot of banks, right? I was sort of in the financial services practice. Um, and one of the things that was just shocking, and I again, like, this is no surprise now, right? I'm sure a lot of people have seen the Big Short, right? There's this great scene in The Big Short where Michael Burry, played by Christian Bale, and by the way, Christian Bale was the best Batman. Don't let anyone else ever tell you otherwise. Christian
not
Bale was the
Michael
best
Douglas.
Batman.
Come on, the original,
No,
not
no, no,
no.
no. Christian Bale. He's got that, like, broody seriousness that, like, I think really encapsulates Batman. But anyway, so like, you have to, like, there's Christian Bale. There's this great scene where he's, like, on the floor, exhausted, reading all of these documents. Like, these are collateralized debt obligations, right? And it's actually from reading these documents he realizes that, holy crap, like, actually the entire mortgage market is going to collapse, and that's sort of sets him off on that journey, right? And but that scene is fantastic because, when I was sort of an analyst, I was thinking, like, I was just looking at just how terrible the data quality was in these bank systems, especially around collateral, about terms, and in the time of financial crisis, right? Like, suddenly these legal terms, these data points in these documents become really salient and important, and it was just simply missing. Right, we saw billions of dollars of missing collateral documentation, where, in that environment was actually really important. So that left a really deep impression, right? This idea that banks just had terrible information, which actually led to, the kind of miscalculations and bad, poor decisions that led to the crisis, right? Because you had incomplete information. So that I think formed, like, a sort of vague thesis in my mind that information quality is important but very expensive. So so fast forward a little bit. After McKinsey, I did my physics PhD at Oxford. And so Eigen was founded on two really serendipitous things. Number one, during my PhD, I invented a new class of X-ray lasers. This is all related. Um, it would have taken about 10 years to commercialize this technology. So I thought that the time scale for that was a little bit too long. But I realized that the mathematics could be used. And this is before, like, neural networks and machine learning was really in vogue. So you were trying to do things more with pattern matching algorithms. But I realized that the mathematics could be used for a sequential pattern matching algorithm, right? Which basically was like, and I was thinking like which applications could be used. Natural language processing, right? Natural human language is a sequential pattern. Now, obviously, we have much more sophisticated representations now of language with BERT and GPT and large language models. But at the time, I was thinking about it from a mathematical perspective, not a machine learning perspective. That's one serendipitous thing, right? X-ray lasers leads to pattern matching algorithm for language. The other serendipitous thing was I was appointed to be a partner level senior advisor to Linklaters, one of the top London law firms. And again, I saw just how expensive it was to collect data out of loan documents. I mean, very explicitly, I think some of these top London or like white shoe American law firms would charge a couple $1,000 just to get 50 data points out of a loan document. So I thought, hey, this was maybe this is why people didn't have the data, is because it's so expensive and bulky to get the data, clunky to get the data. So those two worlds came together. Eigen was founded. The original technology actually came from the mathematics, and then we got really lucky. Lucky or good, right? I think it's a combination of both. In 2017, we're about 15 people. Goldman Sachs had an RFP to digitize their derivatives contracts to comply with Dodd-Frank, which ironically was to prevent another financial crisis to begin with. We won that RFP, and then in 2018, Goldman Sachs did our Series A funding round. So that's basically the founding story of Eigen.
So the parallels between Eigen and Uncork, right? Goldman leading Series A, video gamers, and I've always said my whole role in life should be to eliminate my own job, like because there's always a better job out there. There's something better to move on. In your case, video games, I completely appreciate. Probably would have been the beach for me when I was that age.
Oh, and
But
what were your favorite games?
So, oh my God. Like I used to play in the earliest days, it was Atari and ColecoVision. So everything
Oh
from
wow,
Indiana
classic.
Jones, like classic
Yeah,
games. But I started playing Fortnite around that time, a little bit later with my son, like maybe 2010. And we still, you'll still find me on Fortnite occasionally with my 10-year-old. We play as a family occasionally, which is actually pretty cool with squads. But I love the strategic nature and the fun. I mean, to me, it's about that. It's engagement. There's a lot of, I gotta say, there's a lot of feedback on the comments around, who is the best Batman. So we might have to have a separate one of these. We could bring on a few experts maybe with us and debate that. But that's good. So Louis, going through this, like, it's really interesting. So as you know, like I was in banking for like 20 years and then went to insurance. And in insurance, it's fascinating because there's these concepts of, if you think life insurance and you think of, like, we have these in banking, you have the core banking systems or product processors. And insurance, they call them admin systems for life
Yep.
insurance. Like, you're basically taking a contract that's been signed by a customer, the physical contract, and you're trying to instantiate them as business rules in a technology. And early on, the first time I saw this inside of MetLife, I was like, why aren't we just using the contracts themselves? Because the contract is what the government abide. That's what we have to abide by, is whatever is written in that contract. And then all we keep doing is trying to prove that the technology itself meets the needs of the physical contract. So it's a one-to-one mapping. What we code
That's right.
is what's in the contract. Yours is the first technology I've ever seen to, like, when I had this concept, there was no technology there I could find that could do this. Your technology could basically render, like, a lot of these life insurance contracts into a livable system that could be queried and queued like data, and it becomes data, as opposed to a physical contract, without trying to program using a foreign language all of these contracts into something meaningful. That's when I first saw it, that was my first thing I thought was, like, this is going to revolutionize life insurance and any contract-based business. We're working together at one very large global asset manager and management group. So it's insane. But like they're like, let's talk a little bit about the use case there, because it's Uncork and Eigen together solving a problem. If you want to jump in, let's do that and see.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually sort of a really brilliant example of where best in class sort of no code workflow and operations, can meet that kind of like AI capability, right? So, what's really interesting about this particular use case is that, this particular asset manager did get these tons of, agent notices, loan notices, and, you know, what we've actually seen in many some of the other clients like that process these is sometimes they get missed or lost, or it's also a bit of a chaotic system and process because it's all human and manual, right? And what we're doing here is Encore is ingesting these emails, these notices, sending them off to Eigen, where we extract the information from these notices, these agent documents, at really high fidelity, and to your point, Gary, basically I like to say transforms a PDF into a JSON file. Effectively, that's what you're doing
Yeah.
is you're creating these business rules out of the proper source of record. That data gets sent back to Encore. And actually, what's really cool is we actually have a UI sort of integration as well. So you actually get some of that Eigen interface inside the Encore system, which is really, really cool. When the first time I saw it, I've like shivers down my spine. I'm like a workflow nerd, so that was super cool. And after that, get sent to Encore, where the arms and legs can happen, right? Like certain actions can be taken on an automated scale, so that what used to be a team of operations analysts sort of scrambling around with these emails is now almost completely automated and highly controlled.
It's and Lewis, to me, what your technology did, which I've never seen any technology do, is to break down the document into, like, it's not just PDF to JSON, but you're reading in tables, and like and that's a difficult thing to do, is to not just read it in a table, but understand what's in the table, break it into data. And and PDF is the worst at representing those tables, as we all know, like because we've all generated PDFs from systems before, and those structures and that data, and like that, it was like, again, as I said, like my team is like super excited about like your tech. Like it's funny, it might be like Chat GPT and then there's Eigen, right? Maybe parallel, but and
Yeah,
I'd love to get your perspective on, later on we'll talk more about LLMs, generative AI. What's your
absolutely.
perspective? But I mean, yeah, I mean, the integration, because what Eigen does to us is it's a really looks like to us an integration point that takes meaning out of unstructured documents that are,
Mhm.
and is it finance in nature? Like, how would you describe the documents itself, the businesses that you tackle on your side?
Yeah. So we primarily focus. I mean, so our two main industry areas are insurance and finance, and then we have a scattering of healthcare, pharma, supply chain type of clients. Um, and in terms of documents that we process, what's interesting is there's actually a spectrum of, when you talk about documents, is actually such a wide spectrum, right? So you have things like what I call templated structured documents, like passports, driver's licenses, things like that, which are actually highly commoditized. I think like there's some great like open source packages to process passports. Although we actually have a slightly unique passport processing system, but in general, it's fairly straightforward. Then you have your semi-structured documents, right? These could be in the UK. These could be like land registry title. These could be various types of tax forms, which have structure, but there's some variations to the structure. And then we have something that's like deeply unstructured, right? Or documents that are highly negotiated or custom, right? And these are contracts. These are notices. These are emails. And what's sort of interesting is with the whole generative AI push. And again, we'll talk about generative AI soon. Um, generative AI is actually creating even more documents because it's so easy to create documents, and so you're actually creating all of like you're just creating more and more content that needing to be structured. So and where we focus on predominantly the semi-structured and the unstructured end, just because it's more complex. You can't just throw a large language model at it, um, and it's much higher value because ultimately, when you think about what a bank is, I'm highly simplifying this, right? Um, I like to say a bank is a pile of contracts with an IT system and a process. Um, because at the end of the day, the products that you're offering as a bank or as an insurance company are contracts, right? A loan is a contract. insurance policy is a contract. That is the actual product that you're offering on top of obviously capital that sits on top of that. When we think about documents, when we think about the higher value documents in the value chain, it's really those that are more complex, longer, that I think ultimately add the biggest value for our clients, and that's why we focus there. Also, it's technically, as a math nerd as well, technically it's a far more interesting challenge than
Yeah.
digitizing a driver's license.
I completely agree. And that's, our view of the world has always been, we enable the best technologies to come to the forefront for the users. Like, and exactly what you said, like we've got all the passport scanners and driver's license, and then we have some, you know, intelligence OCR built in with vendors that do really good,
Yep.
highly structured data, highly structured tax, maybe a W-2 form, or,
Yep.
and we've got partners there. But like it's bringing the best, but like you're exactly right. Like that piece that you're tackling, it hasn't been done before you. I've never seen anyone do it at that scale and caliber. And it's the business users that we're seeing. That's the feedback from. So it's not us. It's the business saying that. Um, and that is so when you think about like finance, insurance, like naturally, like there's going to be a lot of other industry lines that need this. Like you mentioned legal before, working in law firms. Like everything in law firm is what you described. Everything in our court system in the States is literally, you could break it into the same concept, which is every decision made, it's interesting to me because that's an area I'd love to see more progress done. It's so manual today. And
I think, yeah,
yeah,
I think if there are any law firms listening here, I think one of the challenges about law firms is the business model, right? As just to put it bluntly, if you're a law firm, your business model is hourly rates, right? So how do you reconcile that with an AI automation? That's one thing that I'm not. I think law firms are trying to figure out, and we definitely work with a couple of law firms that are trying to figure out like that business model question. But in terms of working with other corporates, right, or in the medical space or in the public sector space, at the end of the day, documents are everywhere. It is literally the most common type of business artifact there is. Um, and something like 80 to 90% of enterprise data is unstructured, and even going to be even more so when just GPT spews out more and more of these unstructured texts that need to be read. So
so let's get to generative AI. Like that is, I love that cartoon which showed, one worker looking over another worker's shoulder, and she goes, "Look, I just took these three bullet points and put it into ChatGPT, and it generated this nice long 5-page email." And then the other side, it shows, "Hey, I just received this 5-page email. I put it into ChatGPT, and it generated these three bullet points."
yep, yep.
Like and you're absolutely right. Like the amount of content, it's just going to be like, and our view is like programming language should never be used. Like to us, like communicating with a machine, um, you know, generating, taking a language of English and generating code from it, you know, it's just going to create more legacy faster.
Actually, let's hit on the no code or codeless point
Codeless.
here
Let's do
first.
codeless. Let's do codeless.
Before we talk about
Yeah.
GPT, and one
Yeah.
of the things that we love working with Uncork is that I think we share a very similar philosophy around no code, right? Similar for you, like building applications should not require, a bunch of engineers, typing code. You enable your business users. We have the same exact philosophy, right? Yeah, we like to say even lawyers and analysts can use machine learning to teach to process documents at scale. So anyway, from a philosophical perspective, that's one of the reasons we love working with you guys. On the GPT point, I I am both extremely pessimistic and extremely optimistic at the same time. Let me start with the optimism first. I think on the optimistic side, um, we think that there's a tremendous business opportunity here, right? To automate, to improve customer experience, to improve data collection. And in fact, like we've been embracing large language models since BERT was invented back in 2019. So actually only took us about 2 hours to swap out BERT for GPT. And just this week we released our own version of Eigen with powered by GPT 4.
Wow.
That being said, right, and like there's like tremendous amount, and I saw Encore has a really cool integration with GPT as well. I obviously I think there's tremendous business value here. But at the same time, I think there's a deep amount of caution that I feel as well, both from a business operational perspective and from a sort of human race civilization perspective. Um, on the and we can talk about both, but on just on a business operational side, I think what's interesting is if you look at a lot of the use cases that are really popularized right now, they're often, I would say, non-scalable use cases. They're single point use cases where I'm an engineer, write me some code, or I'm writing a blog post, or write me, like that cartoon you mentioned, like summarize this email. But when we think about the large scale processes that our clients go through in terms of processing millions of emails or tens of thousands of loan notices, or transforming these these derivatives contracts into a specific operational data point at scale, right? Um, it seems like the industry still hasn't quite figured out how to operationalize GPT at that kind of process because there's hallucinations. It's not predictable. The output is meant to be like human like, so it's not consistent. And so I think that like operationalizing this is something obviously like I think companies like ours, both our companies are working on, and I think we have some we'll probably have some really great headway in there. But I think the other risk is just around IP. And my favorite example of this is that let's say you ask ChatGPT to write you a movie script of Frozen in the style of Quentin Tarantino, right? And
Actually, I would watch that. I would that is a cool concept.
you have to find Christian Bale somewhere in there as well. But anyway, I mean, but like who owns the IP there, right? Like obviously ChatGPT ingested Disney scripts, which are owned by Disney, ingested scripts written by Quentin Tarantino. Um, and and so actually there was this great Los Angeles Times article that was talking about how somewhat pessimistically, I think overly pessimistically, but still I think says like it's as a it's a knowledge sausage machine that just does plagiarization at scale. And I think there's a deep question there in terms of, how do we think about the IP considerations? How do we attribute IP back? That's a deep question, as well as data privacy. And all of these are like I would call issues that we will need to see being ironed out as we embrace this technology at scale.
All I keep picturing, Lewis, is that scene in Frozen where the icicle is coming to his head because and she stops it right before it
Yeah.
hits him, and in the Quentin Tarantino, I'm assuming it would hit and there'd be blood shooting like everywhere, like it would be like Kill Bill. But I love the concept. I mean, that would be really, really cool. I like that. It was interesting because when you were describing your summer job before Harvard, there was a story recently about a robot that was trained to basically pick up a box and move it here, and that's a great task for a robot to do. And they added AI to the robot, and in about 15 minutes, it shut itself down. They said it committed suicide. It was because its job was pointless. And it's interesting because as humans, we look at that as opportunity to change and maybe figure out how to do it better, and hopefully, but it basically gave up. But it's really interesting. It's going to be an interesting space for our kids. Like where are they gonna be focusing on these days? And
That's a great question. I don't know. You know what? I revised this question. People ask me like, "Hey, like, what should I advise our kids to study in college and university?" I used to be very, very sort of STEM focused, right? And then recently, I've actually changed my advice to focus on the arts, focus on the creativity, because at least certainly over the last couple years, you know, running Eigen, I actually found my art degree to be in some ways more useful. That like in a world where we have no code platforms like Encore and we have GPT that can write you code, right? I think being able to be creative and human, I think is going to be valued more. Anyway, that's why I say to my kids now.
I I like it, being valued more as a human. I actually think that's a great goal. Yeah, I mean, wow, I'm just making sure there's no questions popping in. Good, we're good. The, Lewis, like just thinking back, like if you were going to give yourself advice at any point during that journey, so like from that first point of the video games, getting back to it, to the bet, won or lost, on London and McKinsey, like what advice would you give someone in any of those stages of life, the high school, the college, looking for jobs,
Yeah.
to anything you would share?
I think I would give give a 18-year-old myself, right, who's just about to start college, sort of advice that, you know, spend more time building human connections, especially in a time like in your like late teens, early 20s. Um, because oftentimes it's those connections that actually lead to interesting things like, doing something completely what I did not expect. And I think in college I was a little bit too much of a nerd. Got 3 degrees in Harvard in 4 years, and
Wow.
probably should have. Like the advice, actually interesting. I gave my brother's advice when he started Harvard 10 years later. I said, "Hey, look, you should party more." I think that's what he did, and he's actually, for his age, way more successful than I was. When I was 26. The advice I gave him was you should party more. I don't mean party just like for the sake of
Yeah,
partying, but
being
building that
social.
human connection,
It,
being
yeah,
social.
yeah. I guess I did a better job there than the three. I got 2 degrees, which is interesting in that, but it was nowhere near like. So wait, was physics, fine arts, and what was the third then? Or is fine
And
arts
a
the
and a master's in theoretical physics at the same time. Yeah,
a master's within the 4 years? Okay, I am impressed. That's it is awesome. That is so Lewis, like we could keep going. You and I could go on forever. I know that, and I know we're coming right up time. This is amazing. Thank you for where you created an amazing vision and company, and we are thrilled to be partnering with you and going to market
likewise,
together. Like it's just
absolutely.
an amazing future, and congrats on everything you and your team built. And this is thank you. We're gonna have to do this again. We're gonna do. I'll invite you back for the panel on favorite Batman. Like maybe we'll have to do that, and maybe we'll get some generative AI to give us input into that.
That would be great. That would be good. Actually, should have actually asked ChatGPT to give us the answer for this before coming through.
Yeah, that's awesome, Lewis. Thank you again for joining us here on Coffee and Codeless,
Thank you so much,
and
Gary.
really appreciate you. Thanks, Lewis.
Always great
Thanks.
to see
Bye
you.
bye.
All right, bye.
Okay. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
Bye.